This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
On this week's programme, is the way we treat migrants in Cyprus pushing them into the arms of traffickers and other criminal gangs?
I think that there is a bureaucracy that is designed to make their lives difficult, and the consequence, which maybe the authorities did not understand, but they did not even investigate, was that they also become victims of trafficking. If the check does not come on time, and they tell the landlord, it's very often the case that the landlord says, well, you either work for me for free or you're out.
Journalists from around the world gather in Sweden for the Investigative Journalists Global Conference.
We are seeing a dramatic rise in pushback against journalists, pushback against people who are after truth and are after informing people. And it goes together with a dramatic increase in organized crime and corruption.
And an upcoming photo exhibition in Old Nicosia.
I would say that in his collection you can find more buildings as they were being built or just finished of hotels in Cyprus than anywhere else.
The rights of migrants have been very much in the news recently, and we have a lot of them in Cyprus. Well, who gets what status, and when they get it, what difference does it make to their lives? Apparently there's a big gap between being approved for asylum and therefore gaining refugee status and continuing to be an asylum seeker or even perhaps on a list for deportation. Corina Dimitriou is a legal expert dealing with fundamental human rights. She joins us now. Corina, the reason for this call actually started when I heard a story about a migrant baby in the hospital, and the hospital didn't provide any nappies for their patient. Now, surely if a child has been taken to hospital and it's clear that the mother is in straitened financial circumstances, then do we not have an obligation to at least offer some support?
Yes, the instance that you mentioned was not an isolated incident. It's a policy. It's a policy for babies being born, so no nappies are offered in the maternity wards, but also if babies fall sick thereafter. I can't say that a particular decision was made to deny them. Probably Cypriot or EU women are also not provided with nappies, and maybe the hospitals do not have the possibility of assessing who is entitled to nappies and who is not based on financial criteria. But surely it would not have been so difficult to conclude that an asylum-seeking woman having to survive on 240 euros per month does not have the possibility of having an endless supply of nappies. And also they lack the support network that Cypriot or EU women would have of calling up a relative to come and meet them at the hospital and provide the nappies. And it's not such a huge amount to be able to take on board a simple proposal of having an abundance of nappies available. I think that we could take a step back and look at how different the asylum and refugee experience is for women compared to them, because they all have special vulnerabilities because of their status, because of their personal history, the trauma, everything that they had to endure in order to come here. But for women, it's additionally problematic, additionally traumatic. The risk is higher when they travel. Sometimes they are victims of torture, victims of trafficking, of sexual exploitation as a price in order to enter Cyprus. And the more restrictions we place on entrance and on reception conditions, the more we increase the grip around the asylum seekers, and we increase the possibilities for their trafficking and exploitation. I think this is something that was never taken on board when designing these measures of continuing worsening reception conditions for asylum.
Yeah, interesting that I see our gender equality person in the government was talking about making sure that there was gender equality in Cyprus. I know it's a long way down the line, but I don't suppose that the migrant situation is featured in that particular idea.
No, it's not. And in fact, from 2016, the Ombudswoman had issued a decision that it's wrong and it's unlawful to discontinue welfare benefits when a woman rejects a particular job offer, because the reasons that she may be rejecting the offer could be valid. She may be asked to work in a farm whilst she's pregnant and to share a room with other men. She may be asked to work in a bar late at night. All kinds of jobs bear risks for women, and women should be able to reject them without losing their benefits. But despite that recommendation, it was never taken on board, and it was not even discussed after Elisa Savvidis left the post. Women continue to be facing a heavier price for being an asylum seeker in Cyprus because they're women, because they're foreign, because of the headscarf. Recently, it has entered the agenda, even though all our grandmothers were headscarf wearers, because they could be victims of gender-based violence, victims of torture, victims of female genital mutilation. This is a very high issue that was never discussed in Cyprus. Some of the countries, like Somalia, Ethiopia, they have a rate of women who are victims of female genital mutilation as high as 99%. So you can imagine how many mutilated women are in Cyprus without special support, without psychological support, without a center to provide consultation and support about marital relations that are greatly affected by it. It's a form of disability. It's a form of torture that women carry to their death. Also, the position in the family increases in conditions of exile and refugee. We have seen murders of women by their husbands, which the police did not take the call for help seriously. There is gender-based violence within the house that falls under the radar because they are afraid that if they report the husband to the police, then everybody will get deported.
Okay, can I come on, if I may, Corina, to the difference between asylum seekers and refugees? Because I think I'm right in saying that the status changes, and one would imagine that having become a refugee, a recognised refugee, then you are entitled to, I think, be treated as if you were a Cypriot. Is that right?
Yes, this is right.
So why is it that we get so many stories about refugees who have actually had their allowances cut off after they become refugees?
Indeed, yes. From the moment that the decision is issued for the grant of refugee status or subsidiary protection, it's the same, then the bureaucracy is very quick to cut their benefits. But it's not equally quick to provide the benefits of the person with international protection. So, like in 24 hours, the asylum seeker's benefit is cut, but then they would have to apply and wait for a year. This is the estimate that we were told, in order for the minimum guaranteed income to be paid. So we have like an entire year of no money, no access to all the other rights that asylum seekers have. Currently, one particular case I have in mind, who has very serious health issues, does not even have access to health care because of the bureaucracy that emerged in this context. I mean, even for asylum seekers, it's I think unacceptable is the right word, that after 20 years of operating an asylum-seeking system, we cannot pay their benefits on time. I mean, why can it not be done electronically, and they have to send these checks, and they need to have bank accounts, and the bank is not giving dates to open bank accounts for months? They become homeless. Even though they have the checks, they become homeless because they cannot cash them. The checks get lost, and then it's nobody's problem when they get lost. So I think that there is a bureaucracy that is designed to make their lives difficult. And the consequence, which maybe the authorities did not understand, but they did not even investigate, was that they also become victims of trafficking. If the check does not come on time, and they tell the landlord, it's very often the case that the landlord says, well, you either work for me for free or you're out. I'm aware of several similar situations. And as you can imagine, it's not going to be the best job offered at the time.
Now, how can we do anything about this, Karina? Because it's clearly against the law, actually. I mean, if you've got a state that undertakes to provide certain facilities for refugees, not providing them for a year is surely illegal.
They will always blame it on the bureaucracy. This is the usual answer. I believe that there is I'm not exaggerating, 1,000 reasons to take the government to court for various things. One thing that is often reported is why should they not be allowed to drive? There are people who have serious disabilities who are victims of war, and they cannot walk distances, they cannot take buses, and the only thing that they can do is drive, and they're not allowed to drive. In Ireland, they had a similar regulation, and it was declared illegal by the court. But in Cyprus, if you take anything to court, you would have to wait between 5 and 10 years to get resolved. We have rules. We have rules that came with accession to the EU, but enforcing them is another story altogether.
And it seems from what you've been saying that this is an intentional strategy, should we say, by the government in order to...
I cannot imagine why they are so quick in discontinuing the benefits when entitlement to a particular status stops, but they're not so quick in providing the benefits when there is entitlement. Even when asylum seekers arrive, there is a period between 3 to 5 months in order to get the first benefit. Now they have excluded them from the labor market for the first 8 months. So I'm not quite sure how they expect them to survive if it's not trafficking and prostitution and all that. I mean, do we really want them to have to resort to these in order to survive?
No, we don't.
Some policies are so short-sighted that they're unbelievable.
We have to leave it there, Karina, but I'm sure we will talk again, and let's see whether or not the authorities in all the different departments dealing with asylum seekers and migrants actually do look at the long-term problems that they themselves are creating, and of course that is then pushing a lot of Cypriots into becoming far right and racist and everything else because they see these people as no good. Karina, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much.
That's Karina Dimitriou, who is a legal expert, particularly when it comes to human rights.
This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
My next guest is a very well-known journalist in Cyprus. She is Esra Aygun, and she joins us now because she's just come back from what sounds like a fascinating conference in Sweden, in Gothenburg, I believe. It was the Investigative Journalism Conference. Esra, thanks for joining me. Do tell us more about this conference, and if you're able to, as I had a look at some of the topics, a lot of attention on artificial intelligence.
Yes, thank you, Rosie, for having me on. Indeed, it is fascinating. So the Global Investigative Journalism Conference is the world's largest international gathering of investigative journalists. And we had, in fact, this year in Sweden, more than 2,000 journalists from over 130 countries. Getting together, training on the latest tools and techniques of investigative journalism, participating in workshops, networking, meeting each other, discussing possibilities of cross-border cooperation in investigative journalism, and brainstorming, basically. And yes, so AI is one of the risks or the threats in front of, investigative journalism, but it is also a tool for investigative journalists. So it is something that can be used to the benefit of the public of investigative journalism, or to the benefit of people involved in crime and corruption. So it is a very complicated issue, actually.
They had so many different sessions on it, looking at it from different angles. Did you attend any of those?
Oh, yes, I did. It was actually such a challenge to choose between sessions because all of them were, more interesting than others. So we had lots of tips and techniques from industry experts on how to, make investigations, from how to follow money, how to do online searches, how to use AI, as I said, for investigative journalism, how to use satellite imagery for investigative journalism, how to do cross-border reporting, physical security, how do you, protect yourself, your laptop, your iPhone, how do you protect yourself from abuses of freedom of expression, like slap cases, like death threats, like being tapped, like your phone's being tapped. So we went through all these trainings and awareness raising sessions to keep ourselves safe, our work safe, and also to improve the ways that we can pursue investigative journalism. So yeah, it was a full-on week of really fascinating stuff. Yes.
It's a jungle out there, isn't it, for journalists these days, Ezra? You yourself, I think, have had a few run-ins with people who haven't liked the things that you've reported on, and you no longer live, I think, in Cyprus.
Yes, that's true. And all that because of political journalism, right? So I wasn't even exposing crime or corruption or how much money had been stolen in this process of acting as government officials on both sides. And we know these are going on. So imagine that the journalists that are actually involved in investigating crime and corruption, they are under much bigger threat than I ever was. And that's why we have all these security trainings, and there are some journalists who don't even use their real names because they come from very violent countries where their lives are threatened on a daily basis. So yes, and as you said, we are seeing a dramatic rise in pushback against journalists, pushback against people who are after truth and are after informing people. And it goes together with a dramatic increase in organized crime and corruption. So actually we are seeing at this time in our lives the cooperation of corrupt officials and organized crime and corruption going hand in hand, who are, as I said, pushing back against journalists, investigating what they're into, what they're trying to do, what they are looting, what they're laundering, what they're hiding and stealing. So yes, it goes hand in hand, unfortunately, in our days, and it takes not one journalist but a network of journalists to expose these things.
Well, yes, I must say that some of the things that have come out in recent years, things like the Panama Papers and all of that stuff, that was a coordinated effort by journalists in many different countries, wasn't it? So do you think that things like the Swedish conference go a long way towards introducing journalists? After all, they're the first ones now who are likely to expose corruption, especially in high places, not just organised crime. And so I guess that it means you need to have a backup of buddies, if you like.
Yes, that's very true, Rosie. Exactly as you said, things like Panama Papers and many other investigative reports have shown us that we do need a network to fight a network, because crime and corruption is a network. And as you said, this conference in Sweden, the Global Investigative Journalism Conference, it brings together, well, physically there were more than 2,000 journalists there, but all together, since it's launched, it has brought together more than 10,000 journalists from 140 countries, cooperating, working together, exposing a lot of crime and corruption cases from small, like local scale, like municipalities, local tenders, which still cost millions in public money, to large, like global scale crime and corruption, like the Panama Papers did. So yes, I think we have finally have come to the understanding that individual journalists in individual countries cannot do this on their own. We need a much bigger network, not only to expose the cross-border links, because we do have a lot of cross-border links. So let's take some kind of corruption in Cyprus. It's not going to end in Cyprus. It has links in Dubai, in Russia, in so many other places. So not only a network enables that cross-border cooperation, but it also gives the journalists the physical security, the tools, the legal security, the advice, the very seasoned expert editors to work with them, so journalists can focus on their investigation, and almost everything else is taken care of, like this bigger network, which does give a lot of comfort, not only in the work that you're doing, but also the comfort of knowing that someone has got your back and you're not exposed on your own vis-a-vis these corrupt people.
What about the freelance versus mainstream media argument? Because an awful lot of mainstream media journalists now aren't allowed by the people who employ them to break some of these stories.
Exactly. So that's exactly why this network, the Global Investigative Journalism Network, has as its members non-profits. So we don't have mainstream media. We only have the non-profit media that are committed to investigative journalism and journalism only, not involving in propaganda of officials or serving as a mouthpiece of officials. So it does make that distinction between most mainstream media, I should say, and non-profit investigative journalism outlets.
It is a dangerous world, Ezra. Do you ever think back and say, maybe I should have done something else?
No, I, on the contrary, say I should have done more, and that's why I keep looking for new ways of being able to say more, do more, expose more. I think we all should be doing more.
That is Ezra Aygun, well-known Turkish Cypriot journalist who now lives abroad, but who's learnt an awful lot, I think, at the Global Investigative Journalism Conference, which took place recently in Sweden. Ezra, many thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you so much.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
Well, you might not think that summer is over considering the temperatures we're still enduring, but it is around this time of year that the cultural scene in Cyprus really kicks off. And one of the leaders in our culture map is the CVAR. Its director is Rita Severis, and she joins us now. Rita, a little bit of a break for the summer, but you're back with a vengeance, I think, now. And starting off on Monday, a fascinating photo exhibition by Edmund Torikian. Now, I think he was one of the founders, was he, of the Cyprus Photographic Society?
Indeed, and this is why we're doing it in collaboration with the Cyprus Photographic Society. Edmund Torikian was an Armenian engineer, but in his heart, in his soul, he was really a photographer, and he spent most of his time photographing people, monuments, sites, and buildings. I would say that in his collection, you can find more buildings as they were being built or just finished of hotels in Cyprus than anywhere else. He was fascinated with this. And so the Photographic Society donated the Torikian archive to the CVAR, and we are showing it for the first time starting Monday.
What sort of era are we talking about here?
We're talking between the 50s and the 70s.
So there was a lot of building going on then. I suppose it's interesting that back then, if you look at what we have now, maybe you wouldn't even recognise some of the places.
Well, it took me some time to recognise the Hilton Hotel the day that it was finished. I can tell you, it's a site of Nicosia there for years. But as it looked in the photograph, I had to stop and think for a moment. Where is this? What is this? I know this, And then there were lovely hotels like the Vaivaras Court, which was outside Famagusta, which one could remember from years ago and wonders today what's happened to it.
So who do you think will be coming to see this exhibition? Because apart from people who are very interested in photography, I guess historians and geographers of Cyprus.
The historians, geographers of Cyprus, the Armenian Society, of course, because he was an exceptional member of the Armenian Society. There would be people that are interested in, as I said, old buildings, architects, and people that have to do with tourism as well.
Right, so it's opening on the 2nd. I think it runs for several weeks, doesn't it? 2 weeks or thereabouts?
It runs to, yes. It runs to the 17th, and on the 7th, the 14th, which are Saturdays, we will be having educational programs for children based on the Torikian exhibition. Children can come here with their parents, and we will talk to them about the exhibition, about the photographs, talk to them about photography, and teach them how to do collage with photographs of the Torikian exhibition.
That's great. You do a lot of work with schools, don't you, at the CVAR?
Oh, yes. We have about 2 schools a day. We're very happy with that. We have quite a lot of programs, and we're increasing them all the time. And of course, now, this autumn, people can come and visit a renovated museum, because the staff and myself have been working all of August renovating the whole of the museum. So there are a lot of new things that have been put up, new paintings, a lot of new scenes, a lot of new costumes. We gave it a facelift for the completion of 10 years of CVAR.
It's been a very successful 10 years, if I may say so, Rita. What are you hoping for the future?
More successful years, would I say. And a lot of sponsors, please, please, please. Because we're a private museum, we need sponsorship to carry on with what we're doing.
Well, people can find out more if they Google the CVAR, I think, can't they? And you've got a full programme in October, including, I see in the newsletter that you send out by email, something that's been going for a while but might interest visitors to Cyprus particularly, or even residents who don't get out and about too much, and that's your app with guided tours.
Yes, with North and South Nicosia. It's free. You can download it on your telephone, be it an iPad or a smartphone. I don't know much about phones. But anyway, you can download it and you can follow a map which is presented there of North and South Nicosia with all the monuments, all the sites that we had something to talk about. And you don't only hear, but you also see old photographs or old paintings of those sites in the app. And it takes you all around North and South Nicosia, and it's in 8 languages. But there is also another tour, which is the religious monuments alone. And then there's another tour, which is the walls of Nicosia. And then there's another tour, which is a treasure hunt for children.
Fantastic
so
stuff.
It's a lot of fun.
It does sound not just fun, but also, I mean, we don't really look back, do we, at our history and take in how that maybe has affected our lives these days. So let me point everybody in the direction of the CVAR. And Rita Severis, many thanks once again for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, Rosie.
Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.